Good morning or good afternoon. Whenever you're watching this video, I am really excited. I'm really honored to be here today with all of the disciples from the Philippines. What a blessing. What an encouraging opportunity. I'm thrilled, and the title of my message today is The Young Will See Visions and the Old Will Dream Dreams. That's from Joel chapter 2, so be turning in your Bibles there. We'll look there in just a few minutes. But by way of introduction, my name is Doug Arthur, and I am serving in the kingdom of God in Boston, Massachusetts right now. God has blessed me to serve in his church full-time for so many years, and I'm really grateful about that. Joyce and I worked together for many, many years. This picture shows you us these days. I met Joyce, my wife, for the very first time when she was 13 years old. I was 14. I was the older guy. And I met her, and 4 days later, I told some of my best friends, I think I met my wife. Now, as it turned out, it took me 8 years to convince her to marry me, but she did that. And she married me, and we've been married 40 years this year. And God has blessed us in some incredible ways. We were encouraged to be married in Boston in 1982. We went to London, England, and started the church there. God was able to use us in that situation to help people become disciples from all over the world. The London church sent churches out to Nigeria and India and Australia, the South Pacific, Singapore. God was working in an incredible way. A few years after that, about a decade later, we came back and worked for a time in the Philadelphia church. And then we went and led the Washington, D.C. church for about a dozen years. God took us to Baltimore temporarily. And then in 2007, we came back to Boston, exactly 25 years since the time we were sent out from here as missionaries. God has blessed us in the past several years. And a couple of years ago, about a year and a half ago, I got a chance to work for the Beam Missions Foundation on global missions around the world. It's one of the most incredible jobs that an evangelist could ever have, and I'm going to share more about that. And today's message is going to be about the young seeing visions and the old dreaming dreams. You know, Proverbs chapter 25 and verse 25, it's an easy verse to remember. Proverbs 25:25. Like cold water to a weary soul is good news from a distant land. Today, I don't have much time, but I've got a lot of good news, a lot of exciting things I want to share with you about how God is working, not just in the Philippines, though he's working in the Philippines, not just in Africa, though he's doing unbelievable things there, not just in Latin America or in the U.S., God is working around the world. And I feel blessed and honored to be with you. I've been to the Philippines several times. You are blessed by God to have the people that are there, the nature, the warmth, the kindness, even the godliness is there. I know there's sin too, but you have a wonderful people. And God has blessed you to be in that part of the world. But we're going to talk about God's vision. You know, God has a vision not just for young people, not just for old people, not just for men, and not just for women. God has a vision to use everybody, and that's incredible. Go ahead and turn over in your Bibles to Joel chapter 2. And you know, Joel is one of the minor prophets. And when you talk about minor prophets, they have some strong challenges and some bad news to bring. And certainly when you read the book of Joel, you know there's a lot of serious correction is there. But here in chapter 2, God describes what happens after the challenge, what happens in the glorious days of the Lord. And we find in chapter 2 and verse 28, Joel writes, "And afterward, I'll pour out my spirit on all people. Your sons and daughters will prophesy. Your old men will dream dreams. Your young men will see visions. Even on my servants, both men and women, I will pour out my spirit in those days." You know, God's promise here is for a glorious kingdom on earth. This is the passage that when Pentecost comes, Peter quotes. Peter says, I see now, this is the culmination of history. This is the kingdom of God coming on earth, just as Joel prophesied. And he says, when this time comes, he says, I'm going to pour out my spirit on the men and the women. And I praise God that in God's infinite wisdom, he didn't just give it to the women or just give it to the men. God says, I'm going to pour out my spirit on everybody. But not only did he say, I'm going to pour it out on the men and the women, he also said, I'm going to pour it out on the young and the old. Now, you can answer for yourself what old is. One of the things I've observed is as I get older, my definition of what old is changes. I turned 60 a couple of years ago. When I turned 60, I began to refer to 50-year-olds as young people. I remember being in my 30s, I thought people in their 50s were on the brink of death. But our perspective changes. But whether you consider yourself young or old, God wants to use you in a great way. God wants us to be people of visions and dreams. And I want to ask you, how are you doing in the area of visions and dreams for your life? You know, we've been in a pandemic all around the world. About 18 months ago, I was scheduled to come to Manila and visit the School of Missions there. It was all set. I had my tickets. I was so excited. And then I started getting emails. Hey, bro, we have a few cases of the COVID. But hey, bro, we're on orange alert right now. Hey, there's only one level left. And then the day before I was supposed to travel, I got the email that said they've locked down the country. You know, this past year and a half, and it's continuing in different parts of the world at different rates, has not been a great year for visions and dreams. We've had lockdowns, we've had death, we've had challenges. But God's vision for the kingdom is that young people will be filled with visions and old people will be filled with dreams. And I want us to talk a little bit today about having visions and dreams. I want us to talk a little bit about what it means as older disciples. Now, you know, one of the things I love about our fellowship is we now have disciples of all ages, young and old. And I want to talk to the mature disciples for a little while. Some call them geezers. Some call them the older folks. I want to talk about older dreamers. And I want to tell you, I want to introduce you to these two men, old men who dream. One of them is named Tom Beam, and one of them is named Bob Gemple. Bob Gemple, many of you may recognize because Bob was the CEO of Hope Worldwide. It was his vision and his dream in the 90s, along with his wife, Pat, and they built an international organization, a charity to help poor people that reached around the world through disciples. Things like a hospital in Cambodia where 1.5 million people got free medical treatment who couldn't afford to pay for medical treatment. Programs around the world. In India, the Village of Hope eradicated leprosy for 1,000 leper families in New Delhi, India. God did amazing things around the world. In Manila and in the Philippines, there were orphans' homes and different things that God has done through Hope Worldwide. That's because Bob Gemple was a dreamer. I love him because he was also my stepfather. The Lord took him 2 years ago, and I miss him dearly, but I'm challenged by his life and his dream. You know, the fella he's standing beside in this photograph, and this photograph is about 30 years old, is named Tom Beam. He's another kingdom dreamer. He was a man, a very simple man. He lived in Oklahoma. He had a very simple business. They made seat belts for cars and school buses. And Tom saved every penny he could. He lived in a very modest house. He drove an old truck. He tried hard to be frugal and save his money for God because he had a dream. He dreamt that when he died, he would leave all of his possessions, nearly all of his possessions, to preach the word around the world. He left an endowment of $10 million to the Boston church. And the only direction he gave was that we should use it for high impact missions. Tom's vision, he said the Boston church has sent churches around the world. More than 50 congregations were started from there. And so I want to just give all I have, all I've made. He and Ada together took their whole life savings and they handed it to the elders of the Boston church. It was one old dreamer handing those resources to another group of older dreamers, and said, do all you can to serve the mission of God. You know, it's with that vision that we began dreaming. Well, what do you do? You know, Jesus' challenge in Matthew chapter 28 is to go make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, and I'll be with you always to the very end of the age. What a challenge. The idea of trying to have an impact in all nations. And you know, we prayed a lot about this in Boston, and we worked together, and we sought input from other people, and we began establishing training centers for visionary young people around the world. And in the past 12 years, we have seen 12 schools be established on 5 continents. And you can see the schools right here in this slide. The red schools, the school in Chicago, in Boston, in Atlanta, in Mexico City. You see one in Paris, one in Lagos, Nigeria, the one in Moscow. You see one in Bangalore, India. You see the Philippines there has a school of missions, as well as Sydney, Australia. God is training at the moment 250 young dreamers for his kingdom. And these are young people who are now getting together with other young people and are training together and learning together and working together to see what God can do. They have a vision. They're filled with faith. Just in the last year alone, we started the program in San Antonio, Texas, and in Johannesburg, South Africa. We're about to start next year a program in Sao Paulo, Brazil. God is opening doors. And there are other schools in French-speaking Africa, in India, in the Caribbean, perhaps in Central America, where doors are opening for dreamers to be strengthened. These were the result of an old man who was dreaming dreams. You know, I think as an older brother, it's interesting. As I crossed 60, I realized I'm not in middle age anymore. Once you cross 35, you start to think, well, I'm middle-aged. Well, by the time you get to 55, you're not going to live to 110. Okay, so as an older man, I know it's important that we continue to dream. Because, you know, there are people like Caleb that we're going to read about here in Joshua chapter 14. Caleb was a guy who had a passion for God that was consistent through his life. Now, in reality, sometimes we're tempted to grow weary and lose hope. But I, for one, want to be a person who grows stronger and stronger in their faith and their conviction about God as the years go by. In Joshua chapter 14, we'll look in verse 6. And it says, now the people of Judah approached Joshua at Gilgal, and Caleb, son of Jephunneh, the Kenizzite, said to him, you know what the Lord said to Moses, the man of God at Kadesh Barnea, about you and me. I was 40 years old when Moses, the servant of the Lord, sent me to Kadesh Barnea to explore the land. And I brought him back a report according to my convictions. But my fellow Israelites who went up with me made the hearts of the people melt in fear. I, however, followed the Lord my God wholeheartedly. So on that day Moses swore to me, the land on which your feet have walked will be your inheritance, and that of your children forever, because you have followed the Lord my God wholeheartedly. Now then, just as the Lord promised, he has kept me alive for 45 years since the time he said this to Moses, while Israel moved about in the wilderness. So here I am today, 85 years old. I'm still as strong today as the day Moses sent me out. I'm just as vigorous to go out to battle now as I was then. Now, give me this hill country that the Lord promised me that day. You yourself heard then that the Anakites were there and the cities were large and fortified, but the Lord helping me, I will drive them out just as he said. You know, Caleb is such an inspirational character. The Bible says they sent the 12 spies into the land, and Joshua and Caleb came back with a good report. We can do it. But the other 10 spies were faithless. And as a result, all of the Israelite men and women, all of the grown people died in the desert, save 2, Joshua and Caleb. And the Bible says this is Caleb going to Joshua, who's the new leader. He's the one who replaced Moses, and saying, look, I'm just as vigorous now as I was then. I'm 85 years old. Give me the hill country. God promised it. Moses promised it. Give it to me. That passion inspires me. And I want to ask us, as older brothers and sisters, do you still have that passion? Can you still give a report according to your convictions? You know, sometimes as we get older, we're tempted to compromise our convictions. But that was not how Caleb was. And I want to encourage us, whether you're 55, 65, 75, 85 years old, be wholehearted for the Lord. You know, I had an incredible opportunity a few weeks ago. Well, a couple of years ago, a sister came to me and said, my father has been studying the Bible on and off for 14 years. And he's come close, but he's never become a Christian. But I think you could help him. Would you get together with him? And you know, Bob and I started studying the Bible together. And we studied the Bible together for about 5 more years. I think in total, Bob studied the Bible on and off for about 19 years. But you know, Bob, 3 months ago, Bob made his decision to repent of all of his sins and get baptized into Christ. And this is a picture of me baptizing Bob at 85 years old. He's 85 years old and he's a babe in Christ. His daughter and her husband, his grandchildren were at the baptism. They're disciples too. Everybody's praising God and crying. And Bob is a dreamer at 85 years old. I want to encourage us. Let's not give up on our family, but also let's never stop dreaming as older disciples for God. It's time for us to think, well, what is God calling me to now? You know, it's interesting. Some of us think, well, I turned 40, then my life is over. Caleb is looking back on 40 as a young age. That's when I was young and vigorous, and I'm just as vigorous today. But I want to challenge mature disciples. Be known as in the fellowship, not as just the ones who have wisdom, but also the ones who have dreams. You know, that's the first point. That's the first thought, is we need the old to have dreams. But we also need the young to see visions. This is a slide. It was one of my favorite slides. The young will see visions. That's my grandson. That's my oldest grandson, Evan. And he's showing the way. He's a very precocious, energetic young boy, and he's always trying to tell you where you're supposed to go. But you know, God's vision for young people is that they're filled with dreams and visions themselves, that they're looking to see what God can do. A lot of the most incredible stories in the Bible were accomplished by people in their teens or 20s. The apostles were in their 20s. God does amazing things. Joyce and I went to London when I was 23 and she was 22. It's amazing what can be done with faith and a vision among the young. You know, as we thought together in the Beam Missions Foundation, one of the things we realized is that God's calling us. Our responsibility as older brothers was to have those dreams. But we decided that our vision, that our responsibility was to make sure that young people had an easy path to spiritual adventure. You know, John the Baptist, when he came into the world, he was described as the one who was going to prepare the way for the Lord and make straight paths for him. John the Baptist's job was to get in and get people ready for the Messiah to come, to smooth it out. You know, he started preaching radical repentance was essential to get into the kingdom of heaven. He was preaching repentance. He was preaching baptism for the forgiveness of sins. He was getting the audience ready. He was smoothing it out and making a level path for the Messiah to come. And as we work together with the Beam Missions Foundation, that's our conviction. How can we make it easy for the young to have visions and dreams? Do you remember all of those schools of missions? Well, that slide shows it, but one of the things that we were praying about and we thought about together was, hey, how are we going to connect the young people around the world? How are we going to make sure that the brothers and sisters in the Philippines can know some of the brothers and sisters from Africa or from the US or from Europe? How can we connect the disciples of the next generation? And we decided to try an experiment because COVID hit and everybody was on Zoom. And so we went to something we called a Global Connect class. You see a Zoom screen here. There are students from the 250 schools of missions and instructors from all the different schools, all on the same Zoom call. Everybody got a chance to meet people and listen to people and work together with their brothers and sisters from around the world. There was an incredible enthusiasm as the young began to have visions. They were visionaries. And we put them together. I taught a class on public speaking, and we broke them into international study groups. And I asked them to put a slide together just for their group, and they came up with all of these incredible things. This group named themselves the Sermonizers. Zeal, power, conviction. And you see Yaza there and Eugene from the Philippines, but also Vishal from New Delhi. And Natalie and Paul from Moscow, T.E. from Sydney, Australia. Brothers and sisters who are getting to know each other. They're working on sermons together. They're giving each other feedback and critiques. And they're building relationships around the world. Ligaments for our fellowship. The next group, this group, the Soul Catchers, they all look like models. Kent is there from the Philippines. Everybody looks so chic and cool. But you see people there from India, Russia, New Zealand, the Philippines. Again, building these ligaments. We're trying to smooth the path so that young dreamers can do something incredible for God. The young will see visions. And so we were encouraged by that progress. But then we thought, you know what? This is great. And these are young people who are connecting all around the world. What about people who are just wondering, should I try to serve God full time? Should I go on an adventure? Is there a way that I can get involved? Not just virtually, but personally. And we developed a program called Chance of a Lifetime. And Chance of a Lifetime is a 15-month internship where people spend the first 3 months at Camp Hope for Kids, which is a camp dedicated to helping young people, children of kingdom that grew up in the kingdom, but also a lot of kids who grew up in the inner city in North Philadelphia, in some of the roughest places. And you know what we did is in January, we said, well, let's put it out there and see who would be interested. Let's just see. It's very short notice. We're going to announce it in January and we're going to try to start in June. But let's see if there are any visionaries who would be interested in a chance of a lifetime. And you know what happened then? Amazingly, we advertised it in January. By February, there were 40 young visionaries from around the world. Because this program starts out in Philadelphia. Then they come to Boston for 9 months and train in the School of Missions. Then they go out to places like the Philippines or Mexico or Nigeria or Johannesburg, and they work internationally and build relationships together. But there were 40 young people from around the world who raised their hand and said, choose us, we're ready to go. Because of the pandemic, we had to restrict most of the international travel. But then there were 15 who were chosen. All 15 dropped their life plans and are serving God full time right now. It's incredible what God does through young visionaries. But it's not just through the Beam Missions Foundation. Have you heard about Revive EE? This is a group who a year and a half ago decided to take 10 months out of their life and just go preach the word. They raised their own funds. They came from many different countries. Sean and Lena Wooten led this team, and it was supposed to go to Budapest, Hungary. But the pandemic hit. So then they went to Istanbul. And then they were kicked out of Istanbul, and then they ended up in Odessa, Ukraine, sharing their faith during a pandemic in Odessa, Ukraine. They were trying to share their faith in English. Most people didn't even speak English, and still God worked in an incredible way. More than a dozen Ukrainians became Christians during a lockdown and a pandemic because of the vision and the faith of the young. You know, in conclusion, I have a question for the young. Are you a visionary? Are you a person like David who's dreaming about what God can do? Or are you a person who's just trying to fit in and sit back and sometimes even become critical or negative or faithless? What kind of people are you attracted to? Are you attracted to spiritual dreamers? People who have a faith that is exciting? Or are you attracted to skeptics or critics or people who never push very hard, never really put themselves out there? God has an unbelievable vision. God says, my concept for the kingdom of God, it includes the men and includes the women. It includes the young seeing visions and the old dreaming dreams. My time is up. I've got a lot more exciting things to share. I look forward to coming to the Philippines soon, once the pandemic settles down. I pray God is taking care of you and your family. And I know it's been hard for all of us. I've had friends who've passed away from COVID, and it's been a trial. But still, in the midst of it all, I think God's calling the young to have visions and the old to dream dreams. Thank you for your time, and God bless.